Welcome to Talk Tickers. So, MDB Capital just dropped their Q2 earnings, and on the surface, they looked pretty rough. But here's the crazy part. The market didn't seem to care. So what's going on? Well, this call wasn't really about the last quarter at all. It was all about a huge strategic pivot and a major catalyst that could completely change the game for this company. All right, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll rip the Band-Aid off and look at the tough numbers. Then we'll get to the good stuff, the real story here, which is this big strategic pivot. After that, we'll break down a surprise catalyst they dropped on the call, see how they're planning to grow their community, and then, as always, we'll wrap it up with some concrete trade ideas. Okay, let's dive right in with the numbers. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They were not great. So the headline number here is a GAAP EPS of negative 83 cents. That means for every share out there, the company lost 83 cents this quarter. And if you compare that to last year's 46-cent loss, well, you can see it's definitely a step in the wrong direction. And wow, when you look at revenue, it's even more dramatic. A 79% drop compared to the same time last year. You might be asking, how does that even happen? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. Their main engine for making money, those fee-generating deals, just completely seized up this quarter. Zero. So all in all, the net loss swelled to over $8 million. Now, they've got about $18 million in cash on hand, so they're not going out of business tomorrow, but, the clock is ticking. The pressure is absolutely on to get some deals across the finish line and get that fee income flowing again and fast. Okay, so with numbers like that, you'd expect the stock to get hammered, right? Well, that's not what happened. The stock actually moved up after the call. So what gives? It's because the market was listening to the story, not the stats, and management spent the entire call painting this really compelling picture of the future, all built around a massive strategic pivot. And that whole pivot revolves around this idea they call public venture. The core belief here is pretty radical. They're betting that for the most exciting young companies, the old way of doing things, staying private for years, stuck in the traditional VC world, is broken. They think going public early is the smarter play. So what does that pivot actually look like? Well, it's a direct response to what's happening in the market. They're basically shifting away from their old bread and butter, the really deep tech and life science stuff that can take forever to pay off. Instead, they're going after what investors are screaming for right now. Companies that are already profitable, and this massive, massive opportunity in metabolic health. And this isn't just some vague promise either. They came to the call with receipts, highlighting a brand new pipeline. First up, they've already filed the S-1 to take a company called Buda Juice public. And get this, it's a profitable, fast-growing beverage company. Then they doubled down on that metabolic health theme with two more names, Paulex Bio, which is working on an oral diabetes therapy, and GT Metabolic, which has this incredible incisionless bypass procedure that uses magnets. Really wild stuff. And trust me, they are not thinking small here. The CEO, Christopher Marlett, basically called metabolic health the biggest opportunity of our time. He's talking about a potential $200 to $300 billion market. That just dwarfs almost every other category in pharma. This is where they're hunting for their next 10-bagger or even 100-bagger investments. But the pivot in what they invest in was only part of the story. They also dropped a bombshell, a huge catalyst announcement that's specifically designed to unlock value that they think is just sitting there, completely ignored by the market. And here it is. They're going to spin out PatentVest. Now, if you follow MDB, you know PatentVest is kind of their secret weapon. It's their in-house IP strategy and law firm that tears apart every single deal they look at. And now they're taking that secret weapon and turning it into its own standalone public company. So you gotta ask, why would they do this? Why spin it out? Well, management's argument is pretty straightforward. They believe PatentVest's true value is totally hidden right now. It's just buried inside the parent company, and no one's giving them credit for it on the stock price. So they laid out this really clear four-step plan. The idea is, first, let's get this value recognized. As a separate company, PatentVest can go all in on the AI revolution that's happening in IP law. They're aiming for a public spinout in 2026. And here's the best part for shareholders. They plan to distribute shares of this new company directly to current MDB investors, so you'd own a piece of both. Okay, so you've got a new strategy and a new pipeline, but you still need money to make it all happen, right? That's why they're also getting super aggressive about expanding their investor base, reaching way beyond their traditional circles. So how are they doing it? For starters, they've inked a partnership with Kairetsu Forum, which is this huge network of angel investors. They're also making a direct push to family offices and RIAs, the folks who were getting really fed up with having their money locked up in traditional VC funds for a decade. And they're even looking at what they call new age platforms, think Reg A Plus or even Robinhood, to get their deals in front of a whole new audience. All right, let's pull this all together. You've got the weak financials in the rearview mirror, but you've got this exciting pivot and a huge spin-out catalyst on the road ahead. So how do you play this? Let's get into our take with some trade ideas. Okay, trade idea number one, we're calling the metabolic pivot. This is a classic pair trade. On one side, you go long MDBH. The idea is you get exposure to the massive asymmetric upside of their hand-picked metabolic health pipeline. We're talking about companies like Paulex and GT Metabolic. And you pair that with a short position in a basket of those generic, old-school oncology biotechs, basically the exact kind of companies that MDB is deliberately moving away from. Trade idea number two is the IP arbitrage. The whole thesis here is that the value of PatentVest is just sitting there, waiting to be unlocked. So you go long MDBH to capture that value before the spinout happens. Then, to play the bigger trend, you could pair that with some long-dated call options on a pure-play, AI-powered legal tech company. That way, you're riding the whole sector wave that PatentVest is jumping into. So look, based on this really compelling pivot story and that very clear catalyst with the PatentVest spinout, we're going to initiate coverage here with a market outperform rating. The big question, the thing we'll all be watching, is simple. Can they execute on this new pipeline and close these deals before that cash cushion gets too thin? That's the story for the next few quarters. And of course, this is not financial advice.